We'll go ahead and get started. It's 5 o'clock, so, well, we don't have the pledge, but we still do it. Let's get the pledge. Okay, look for approval for tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Got a first and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose the same. Okay, let's move into our study session then, and Mary Jo and Kathy.
So as we're passing that out, we'll just talk about calendar committee, which got moved a couple times due to the weather, was able to meet tonight at 3:15, so we met for about 45 minutes, and we had an LPN, 2 teachers, secretary, 3 administrators, 2 paraeducators, kitchen staff members. So the only bargaining unit we didn't have anybody attend and give input on was the custodial unit. So we felt we had some really good input from staff. So maybe go through the calendar first. I'll give that to Mary Jo.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question real quick? So
Yep.
we're only considering an early start? Is that all that's being brought before us tonight?
Yes. So this is the draft, and I'll just walk through kind of the dates and some of the discussion with the groups and where it's at. So again, it would start with 3 days for all our new teachers, and that's part of the mentoring program. And so those would be the first circle days in August, the 5th, 6th, and 7th. The 8th, the square day there, is a professional development day for all licensed staff. So all licensed staff would come back, and then the 9th would be a long weekend for everybody. This prior year, we had staff for the night, for actually that Thursday, Friday, but you'll see some feedback from learning team and other staff members as we move forward on why we changed that just to 1 day for that week. Officially, then all staff come back on August 12th with our district kickoff and meetings and building kickoffs and having a great start to the year. And then the triangles on the 15th and 16th would be parent-teacher meetings or interviews for elementary. So that's K-5. And you can follow along too with the little notes right below each month there. On August 19th, it would be the start date for K-5, but for 6-8, it would be their orientation day. So only 6th and 8th graders would be at Southwest in the high school, and then those buildings officially start on the 20th. The following week, the 30th, is a Friday before Labor Day weekend, and so everybody would be off the 30th as a vacation as well, or holiday, as well as September 2nd. So it'd be a 4-day Labor Day weekend. Then through September 16th would be mid-quarter for the high school on that evening, September 16th, for conferences. Everybody keeping up? Okay. Then we head to October, and fall break is in Minnesota across all districts is 17-18. And then this is the change. So some of the feedback we got from staff is spreading the PD out a day from the beginning of the year to now the middle of October. So we have kids for, about 10 weeks, and now staff can gather what changes do we need to make, look at data, what's happening, kind of a regrouping time to plan for the next span of time. And so then that Thursday, elementary conferences would begin, and they would be in the evening, so students would still have school. The 28th would be a no-school day for K-5 for conferences. And then the 29th is elementary conferences in the evening. In November, the Green Triangles on the 4th and 7th are Southwest conferences. And again, they're in the evenings, so students still have school. And then the end of the month on the 28th, 29th is Thanksgiving. Then we head to December, and the high school has their conferences in the evening. And then winter break begins on that Monday, December 23rd. And that winter break would go through January 1st. And then staff, licensed staff for sure, comes back January 2nd and 3rd. And in the group today with paras, there was discussion that one of those could be a para PD day as well. So that's out there for discussion. And during those 2 days for teachers on the 2nd and 3rd, that's when they're doing their report cards from the end of first semester. They are prepping for second semester, professional development, buildings regrouping, making sure we're in alignment for the second half of the year. So students come back then on, am I doing that right? Yeah. Yes, January 6th. And then we're off January 20th as a holiday for Martin Luther King. We then go to February with that evening on February 3rd as high school conferences. Southwest conferences on February 10th and 13th. And then President's Day would be a holiday and no school. The following week, elementary conferences start up again. And so there would be no school for K-5 on the 24th. And then evening conferences on the 25th and 27th. March, spring break is a week of August 9th. March 9th, what did I say?
August.
March. April 10th is Good Friday, so that would be a holiday, no school. The April 20th is high school conferences in the evening. And then we get to May, and May 21st is the last day for students, and May 22nd is the last day for staff. And then we have some, just a couple slides we want to go through of some of the highlights from the meetings we've had with the calendar groups. Well, you'll see that's coming up on a slide. So I know just some of the questions that may come, the academic rationale for the early start. And so we've talked about this with the teacher groups and learning team. And here's some of the rationale that staff has come up with. The first one is the AP prep time. The AP exams are the first 2 full weeks in May, the last test actually ending on May 14th. I think Kathy said that was the AP Econ. The MCAs, reading and math, that testing ends. As a district, we have to be done with the testing May 7th. And these dates are determined by the state. And then science, the science test has to be completed by May 14th. And then once all the official testing is done, then we see a lot of the experiential opportunities after the testing to finish out the year with, some of the experiential education through community ed. School picnics, class picnics, field trips. We have the school tours for transitioning students, such as all the 5th grade students go to Southwest, they meet the principal, they tour the building to bring their anxiety down before they leave for summer, so they come back feeling prepared for the next school they're starting at. This calendar also allows more time for instruction prior to the accountability assessments. We've heard from students and parents a reduced student stress load of completing first semester before winter break. And students are also more prepared for finals versus taking that lapse during winter break and then coming back for finals. And actually, the second slide, this is some of the committee feedback we got. So the learning team, which is based or made up of teacher leaders from every building and administrators, and in total it's 22 staff members, their comments on the calendar were professional development days are needed throughout the school year. Thus, that's why we took away the August 9th and put it in October. Their feedback is they would also like a spring professional development day before third quarter, and third quarter begins March 16th. That was more of a secondary request. They are very much in support at the end of the first semester ending before winter break. Their comments were after winter break when students come back, they were taking instructional time over the next week to review what they did before winter break in that quarter, and then having students take their finals. And so they found that by starting the new semester right after winter break, they're ready to go. New semester starting and getting to know the kids and starting the class. And we asked for support of this team of where are they at, and it was unanimous. All said they are in support of the early start. Kathy mentioned the bargaining units. We met with all of the bargaining units today, or 6 of the 7. The custodial group was not there. But here were their comments from this group, that they liked the 4-day Labor Day weekend. So they liked that we're taking off the Friday before Labor Day and having a nice break. This group also commented on ending the semester before winter break. The teachers in the bargaining group today said they really like the flexibility in the elementary conference time. And what they mean by that is we're talking about, do these full day conferences, are they 7:30 to 3:30 days, or are they 10 to 6? And so that's really what we need to look at. And I know, just anecdotally talking to Pam Jacobson here as I'm sitting here, asked for her feedback, longtime teacher in the district, and she'd mentioned some morning time would be nice because she's already had 2 parent requests for mornings. So that's the type of things we need to go back to the buildings and say, give us feedback on mornings, afternoons, evenings. What are most parents? How do we meet their needs? The bargaining groups like the 2 days in January for prepping for second semester PD, report card time, getting together with their collaborative teams, and just feeling really prepared for the second semester to begin. The para comments, I think I already mentioned this, was that they would like one of the PD days in January to possibly be PD for them. So we said we would work with Tammy Elfs and Special Services to look at the PD that they need in a year and see if we could fulfill that. The grade 6 and 8 grade orientation has been very successful. We've heard great comments from parents on that, bringing down everybody's anxiety as kids head to new buildings. We did kindergarten orientation this year, and feedback on that was not so much. So we're not asking for a kindergarten orientation day this year, and that feedback is coming from the kindergarten teachers, parents, and the principals. And so we're just ready to start. So we would hold the kindergarten. We do kindergarten roundup in May in each building, and so that's when family tours are given. kind of like an orientation day, but with the principals and the incoming kindergartners going to the building that they'll be going to. And the principal and the kindergarten teachers are all there giving tours, explaining what kindergarten will be like, et cetera. So they felt they really don't need the orientation day in the fall. The challenge that the teachers stated today in the meeting was one comment that they had liked in the past with having that 4-day week. It's just a nice start, getting kids back in the groove and having a 4-day week. And so the schedule as is 5 days, but the next 2 are 4-day weeks. So that was one challenge that was brought up. And the last one is a graduation date. So the discussion is really, and Kathy, maybe you want to talk about this. You just have more background with prior graduations.
Sure. So typically, the seniors are done with their finals on that Tuesday of the last week of school. So say if we did graduation, that would be on the 15th. That would be on the 12th. They have a day where they do their senior breakfast. They walk through graduation. So that is like on the 13th, or usually on the 13th, on that Wednesday. And then the 14th and 15th are typically, we have some seniors who may be involved with athletics in the spring. They may be involved with some other pieces. So we need some time in there for them to take their final exams, or we have a few maybe finishing up a credit. So typically those last 2 days then, in this case, if graduation were the 15th, would be the 14th and 15th. We have approximately 68 seniors this year taking AP Econ. So if we, project to next year, we would have about 60 or so on the 14th, so taking their last final exam on the 14th, and then whatever, things that they need to make up, since AP exams take a full morning or a full afternoon, and so we need some time in there for kiddos to take those other exams, either, and right now, they have the tentative schedule for AP, and so we could have 3, and if human geography runs next year, we'd have 4 on the week of May 4th, and we have 2 on the week of May 11th. So we need some time in there for those kiddos, AP kids, to finish their finals. Or you could move into the next week and have the 21st would be the last day of school. 22nd would be a work day for staff, and then graduation that evening, and then that puts us on Memorial Day weekend. So we didn't really ask for any preference. We didn't have any high school teachers weren't represented at the meeting today. We had an elementary and a middle school. So I don't have any direct feedback from high school teachers on that, but those would be the 2 options.
What was I don't have my notes in front of me from this year, but what are our days this year for elementary and secondary staff days? Do you have those numbers close?
173 secondary, 172 elementary.
So basically the same. Staff was always the one, yep, okay. And then also, we talked about the PD days. I know we talked about an extra one at the beginning of the year. Did you guys ever get any Big 9 averages on what we do, what the rest of the Big 9 does for professional development days and all?
We got Rochester's. Theirs looked quite a bit different. Their staff contract days are 192 days. So they do 7 PDs at the start of the year, but that includes their conferences and different things as well. And then spread out, they have 174 student contact days.
Who does?
Rochester.
I like the breakup where you get that one in there on the 21st to give them a little time. Like I said, once they got about so many weeks in, they can regroup. It's a good idea.
You're talking about the third quarter one before the start of, what date were you looking for there? Because I see the 2, sorry, I see the two for January 2nd and 3rd. Are you using those as that, or are we looking to try to get one in at the end of February or March there somewhere?
You know, we kind of talked about the 16th, and the concern there was kiddos are off for a week, and then kiddos are off another day, coming off of spring break, and so, you know, whether you do it at the end of third quarter, either way, it puts us one more day. Kids are out of class the 6th or the 16th.
So you think, right now you're just looking at that, the January 2nd and 3rd, those would be the last two for the
Correct.
year. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I can go. We're still on over here. I guess I had a couple comments. One was about the kindergarten early start, but you guys addressed that the feedback that you've gotten from parents and teachers that it wasn't necessary. So I had that question. And also, I guess I'd prefer to get an option between an early start calendar and a traditional after Labor Day calendar to look at and vote on as a board like we've done in the past.
On that subject, this would be actually the first year when there is a legitimate, as far as I'm concerned, rational reason for an early start with all the construction that we've got going on, which is one of the reasons that's listed in the statute for starting school before Labor Day. So I think probably in light of all the construction that we have going on at Halverson especially, that it would make sense to just go with an early start this year. And whereas in the past, you know, I've been rather lukewarm on that subject.
However, we're starting the Halverson gym remodel this summer, correct? So we're actually going to get a smushed summer, so there's going to be more time that gym is worked on where kids are in session with the early start. If we had a post-Labor Day start, there'd be less time during the construction while the kids are in session. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if we had a normal school year this year, that is a post-Labor Day start, the current year, that might have, then that would have, we would have gained with a, actually we wouldn't, would we? It would be worse. Yeah, it'd be worse. Yeah. All right.
After Labor Day, we would actually have that extended summer that some districts are reaching for to do a construction project. So this would be the year actually to have a post-Labor Day start. I mean, if we're thinking construction-wise. I'm talking.
Construction timeline on Halverson is not necessarily school start, is it, Mike?
No, it's not.
Even at, on after Labor Day, post-Labor Day start?
Early October.
Okay.
I also noticed that we have 173 student contact days in this calendar, which is contrary to what we voted on a couple of years ago, 174. And I think you all know where I stand on this. As a teacher, I was very jealous of student contact days, and we had, for most of my tenure, 175 days. And it was still difficult to get everything done that needed to be done with students. And I know that there are those who value professional development days. As a teacher, I valued days when I could just work in my room and get ready for students more. And I may be talking to the wrong teachers, but that seems to be a fairly common sentiment among the people I talk to. But then I suppose if I talk to them, that's the way they feel. So and then it's worse. I think it's probably a good thing that I'm no longer in the classroom, because I would go absolutely nuts dismissing seniors. How many days are chopped off the calendar for them?
Two comments to what your statements there, Neil. The first one is feedback we received from staff this year, feedback received from staff last year on the January, on coming back from the holiday after Christmas and grades are due, and so it became really an either or. Okay, we either can do a work day to get grades turned in and get things done, preparing for the students' second semester. And the other piece that got thrown out was the staff development. Right, we don't have time for staff development. And what we're hearing from the learning team is, okay, we do see value in staff development throughout the year. So that is why there's 2 days, and that's where I would say if we were to look at a day that we took away from 174 to go to 173, one of those days would be it. That's that piece. The other piece on the seniors getting out is, I think the discussion for the board really is, what do we want to do about having graduation on Labor Day? I mean, it makes sense to have it on the 22nd and then have the seniors dismissed, 2 or 3 days early like they typically have. The question then becomes, okay, what's the community impact of having graduation on Labor Day weekend? Well, and so that's real, or Memorial Day, excuse me.
So I have a little feedback there. The one point that I struggle too with that much time off for seniors, so I like the 22nd. The other part of that is this year, and it's kind of personal, but it's also relative to our partnerships. Riverland has their graduation the same day. And so how does that affect our PSEO students? And they have to choose potentially this year because we have 2 ceremonies at Riverland, and it's a 4 o'clock and a 7 o'clock. They've already set their calendar through Minstate, and that'll be their graduation day, the 15th. So if we have a significant amount of PSEO, or we're potentially are having them choose.
Right now, I have one that
Okay.
emailed me late in the day, and they're gonna check on 2 other students.
Okay. That's interesting, because I've talked to 2, so 2 of the 3. So I'm trying.
See them.
Right.
Because they're PSEO.
Right.
So they made contact from one.
Right.
We reached out to the rest.
And so what I'm doing on the Riverland side is trying to get them to be put in the 4 o'clock ceremony so they can, but it's just good for partnerships. But also, I see that not, and this just feedback that I've received, I see that not being an issue because of the holiday weekend. I see that as a plus because potentially people are traveling and there's more dates there. So, and people then can come to the ceremony and maybe to a open house if they're having them. So that's the input that I've received and kind of my feeling on it. I just made a note about professional development. Is there something, I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on that Friday before the spring break. Do we see a lot of students missing finals that have to make them up, because they're traveling for the spring break? I mean, was there any kind of thing like that? I'm just curious if there's an issue, if that would be a good day for a PD day, if we wanted to add one. I think if we go to the 174 and take out one of those January ones, I'd be curious how the teachers feel about having to come back on that Friday. I don't know.
How would the families feel about having the students come back on that Friday?
Well, right. I believe the feedback was that the students came back for 2 days. Yeah, and that was the feedback they didn't get 2 weeks off, right? Right.
Because my comments would include that. I would also like to see increased student contact days and also a traditional calendar option. When the board has considered the traditional versus early start in the past, We have said that if results are shown in grades, the data's there, then it makes sense to continue. I've seen increase in AP, which I think is a very small percentage of our student body, and a lot of our other test scores seem to be going the wrong direction. So I don't see the data to back up an early start, and I would also like to see a traditional.
The hard thing that I see looking, you talk early start or traditional. The piece that I really like with the early start is the ending the semester on the Christmas break. Seeing my kids grow up and just others, that Christmas or the holiday time, is a very tricky time. I really worry that they've learned all the knowledge they're going to get. They come back, and now how much behind are they going to be getting, studying again? Reality is, how much are youth going to study over their break? And just knowing, I don't know how students normally feel, but you're going on break and you're supposed to have your week and a half, 2 weeks off, and now you come back in and you've got to start studying for finals right away. Just the comprehension and learning. You'd like to think that if they learned it well over the semester, they should be able to handle it, but we all know that there's a lot of loss there. I guess from the other standpoints, that one probably drives the thinking and with others that I've talked to more than anything. I haven't really seen anything one way or another with early start versus traditional. I've read a lot on it, and I just don't know if there's a lot of variance on that. We've got the data that the AP scores, and again, what about our middle of the road students or our underachieving students? Where do they fall? So kind of mixed thoughts on it, but really the driving one, and maybe it's because of the different work that I'm in and the different programmings I see, that finishing at the break is a really nice thing.
And to that point, we have now several years of data that we could look at. How would we evaluate that with GPAs going up over first semester? So far, I haven't seen any increase that would substantiate the data that would support that theory, although I can understand what you mean by that. Another point I have would be spring sports. I understand have taken a licking in a lot of ways, and I understand that it is difficult for some of our working students, and I know that we're trying to decrease. I believe it's a joint perception that we would like to decrease the burden of our students as far as having to work rather than letting that impact school activities. But I think that this has actually increased the difficulties for students who might be working during the summer and needing to maximize those hours.
I'm going to speak to that a little bit too. There are some of our industry in Albert Lea that have done well with their high school employment because we are ending early. They're able to get in the workforce earlier on that end. So you could potentially have that argument on both sides. And then you have the fall sports that could have the spring sport. I think for me, when I was thinking about the calendar, I thought about individual schedules and weather shouldn't play a factor in how we decide. And I'm like what's the data around the early start and what the benefit? And so that's what's driving any questions that I might have. I also want to make the point of a parent had indicated, she said, I know that you guys are meeting to talk about this, and she said one thing that she noticed is that she's not totally against this early start, but it's been difficult because they take part in community ed activities, and a lot of the community ed activities don't start until after June 1st, or this first, second week of June. And so if that could line up a little bit, you know, I mean, there might be some additional. And then also I think targeted services start a little earlier as well. And so I think those all play into, you know, what's available for our students after that May ending time, so.
So this year, for example, the last week in May, and we intentionally planned it this way of all kids having that week off after school is out, and then Target Services is starting up the first week in June, as well as we've been working with Community Ed on those dates and making sure programming is going. Patty at the public library, I met with her, and so summer programming from her end is starting right away. Her comment to me when we met was she said she has always ended her programming after the fair because she over the years has seen student enrollment, or we won't call them students, I guess, but children going to the public library with all of her activities with magicians and the Zoo Man and just really promoting reading. And she said for a long time she has ended when the Albert Lee Fair or the Freeborn County Fair is on. She sees enrollment drastically drop as we would expect, but the following week there is no programming. And so that's perspective from the Children's Library.
I'm sure it would be, you know, prudent to take a look at that late one for comparison purposes, but as I look at the calendar down here, I guess that would probably make it about a 15th for the student start probably, or I mean an ending date of around the 15th of June probably, if we just kind of moved everything around. But as Dennis said too, it looks like that would put us into probably the 16th or 17th of January on a end of that quarter too, which I know from my children from a personal standpoint has been many years. They probably didn't do a lot of studying over the break. They, I know as they've talked about it now, they thought it looked like kind of a nice thing to get everything all put in the first semester. And if you look at the 2 semesters, you know, we kind of shorten it up anyway to make sure we get it all done with 82 days the first half, I'll just say the first half of the year by December 20th versus the 91 by the end of May.
We also have a considerable amount of testing in the spring that takes away from classroom instruction time.
And what do you mean by it would be ending June 16th? Dave, you just said?
I would just kind of projecting if we move the dates back to like starting like the 3rd of September, probably going to end around maybe the mid-June. I would guess for days. I would just a guess.
I think generally it would be, I mean, in the past, it's always been that first week of June, so it's starting 2 weeks early, so 2 weeks later would put it roughly ending that same June 5th.
It would, but then we've also got all the teacher days at the beginning I was kind of putting in on top. I mean, it could be right, it doesn't matter, but it sure looks like it would be more toward the middle than the first week of, anyway, with Memorial Day and everything.
So the rationale for providing one option, your professional teachers and administrators within the district all recommend an early start for the academic reasons that we have presented. The feedback from conferences, from parents, has been nil in the community on a later start versus an early start. I think people have grown accustomed to it, and that's why we presented just the early start option.
And I guess that would be representatives for all the teachers have said that, but I wouldn't say that all of the teachers have said that. I don't find that to be accurate.
The professional learning team, which is made up of teacher leaders from every building in the district, was unanimous in their recommendation.
How many years have we had the earlier start now? Is this the 3rd one we're on, or 4th?
I'd love to hear from Gigi as a student, what she's thinking.
I would say that there's a lot of drawbacks, obviously, from doing the early start. What with personally, like state fair in the beginning, and then also with the track, because you have to keep going with the spring sports. But overall, from everyone I've talked to and myself, I think, especially for the students, we'd prefer doing the early start because of the Christmas break and the semester 1 ending. It just doesn't make sense to come back to school and redo what you've already done.
And that's been my information talking to staff and students. It's hard pressed to find a teacher in the high school, and they're pretty much the ones I talk to, who are not in favor of the early start for the reasons you cited. And add to that the fact that we gain another week or week and a half of instructional time to prepare for those high stakes tests that are given in the spring. So, I mean, those two things are pretty good arguments in favor of the early, especially that, I mean, every college in the world ends their first semester before break, you know, and it makes sense that we would do the same. I still, though, am very jealous of student contact days, and I like 174 better than 173, and that is our current calendar, as I understand it, and we would have to vote.
Yeah, we're 173 this year because of the Big Nine Festival, this current calendar year.
All right, yeah. But that will not be the case next year.
Oh, next year it would be 173 because of the
So we're losing a day.
We're losing a day from last year, yes.
Right. I'm against that.
I think that if there's any year that would make the most sense to start after Labor Day, it would be this year. I do know that the gym remodel or expansion in Halverson will go into October, but if we start after Labor Day, it'll be less of an overlap. I don't think this is going to sell anyone, but if we did the traditional start, we wouldn't have the commencement debacle because it would be 2 weeks later. I just had to say that. But also, I do see where the high schoolers and the high school teachers are coming from, and that it's just nice to end those, break when we have a winter break to have the finals before then. I do see that, so I think I understand that perspective. But every other, which is pretty compelling actually, but everything else, the MCAs haven't improved. But I think it's kind of gaming the system anyway, so I don't think that's pretty irrelevant to me. But and then also, my biggest, I guess, problem with the early start is that we're different than a lot of the other districts. And then that causes problems for like mixed families that have stepchildren, different things like that. And I think that's just like really difficult. Like if all of Minnesota decided to go with an early start, then, and I know all school districts are a little bit different. They're always going to be a little bit different. But I think this early start causes a bigger burden on families that have students that are mixed, maybe going to different districts and stuff like that. And I thought I had another note here, but I can't decipher my writing, so I think that's all I have right now.
And regarding snow days, so there are 5 days of virtual learning with this calendar here. Is that what we have in the current year?
Correct.
And how many snow days have we had so far?
6.
And as far as building in makeup snow days, we didn't have any of that in the current year, or do we?
No, we don't, and we are, actually I had some communication with the ALEA leadership today for this calendar year on utilization of further e-learning, and they're supportive of that concept.
And so for the calendar for next year, would we want to build in any makeup days, or, I mean, that's just something to think about there.
Makeup days certainly can be built into it. typically they're at the end of the year, or you lose your President's Day or your Martin Luther King Day for the snow day. That's typically how districts have done it. And so what happens there is if people plan trips on President's Day weekend and suddenly we have school, then that impacts teacher planning. So the other option, of course, which I find not very effective at all as a former teacher and administrator, is adding days on at the end of the school year.
Yeah, and on that note, the snow day situation is another good argument for having more student contact days, because then it becomes less of a factor. And I really don't see, it would have to snow a lot more or get a lot colder for many extended days for us to be in jeopardy, as I understand it. We have currently way more. Well, if we have 173 contact days this year, that's 8 more than 165 days required by the state, plus 5 of those 6 days we've had so far are not counted because of e-learning days. So right now we really are down to 172, and we have 7 more days. So why would we need to make up days?
So you're saying you'd prefer increased student contact days rather than built-in snow days?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're not gonna add 7 student contact days to our calendar, but I am content with 174, but I'm a little bit nervous if we go below that.
I think it'd be nice, because now, I mean, we've had a lot of snow days, e-learning days, which are e-learning, which is nice. I really like that model. But then now with the next snow day, like, well, what do we do now? It's kind of, you're working with the ALEA to figure that out. I'd like to have in this calendar to have the 5 e-learning days, and then to say whatever it's going to be, which my recommendation be the next 2 snow days, if there are 2 more, 7 total, the students don't have to make up, and have that in there so then every family knows, okay, we have 5 e-learning days. If there happens to be another one, we're done with e-learning and we don't make it up, or however it is. I like it in place so we got it covered. I mean, we could have 10 next year and then we're still going to have to figure it out as we go. But and then if we add that extra student contact day in, then that would just be more of the case for the students not having to make those 2 up after the e-learning days. But yeah.
But there again, I don't think it should be a problem. Right now, we could have 7 more days when school is canceled because of weather before we would get to the 165 minimum. And, I'm not saying that we are not going to have 7 such days, but what I would suggest is that, especially with the e-learning days as we have now, it isn't like those days are a complete loss, theoretically. So why would we initiate any student or makeup days unless we get below the 165? And we're a long ways away from that. It could happen, but let's not.
And if teachers are contracted already to be in the classroom on a certain day and then they have an e-learning day instead, is that a big issue to consider contractually if we up to the 5 to 7?
What we will have to do is go, and again, I think what I will be bringing to you in 2 weeks is a new MOU with the ALEA to discuss more e-learning moving forward for the rest of the year. So contractually, our choices are, A, we can do e-learning, B, we can not make up the days, or C, we can bring a new calendar to the board and adjust it and add days at the end of the year, which I'm opposed to the third option completely. So we in talks with the ALEA leadership, they are agreeable to more e-learning moving forward.
Are you referring to Article 5, Section 2, Subdivision 1, I believe, of the contract?
Your memory's better than mine there, Neil.
Well, I wrote most of it, so
I just have one more comment about, I like the early start. I just think there's way more pros than cons, but the May, to me, when you talk about the econ ending, so some of those students will be testing the day before graduation when they typically get some free time. They get to bond with their class, they get to do those things. So I think that's just another reason to move that graduation to the 22nd. You know, just to give them, because you've identified that there's students that will have to do that testing. Then you also are participating in spring sports and those kind of things. So I just want to make that note.
That was also brought up in the bargaining meeting this afternoon of, because we have, you know, employees who travel who live in Northwood, Lake Mills, Mason City, who commute here every day. And they let us know that Mason City always has their graduation on Memorial Day, that Friday, and that people love it. And so that was some feedback from the bargaining unit today. So, and this, yeah, so.
yeah.
So a couple questions on the schedule. We kind of talked that the winter break is 2 weeks. Does it have to be 2 weeks? Just looking at some ideas or options, you know, what would happen if the students came back the second and third? Do parents really need that much time off? And if you did that, Martin Luther King, is that a required holiday, or could that be a teacher development day? Because that'd be a way to add a day in and not.
Couple thoughts on that. All right, so if we're ending the semester before the holiday break, staff needs some time to prepare for the second semester. So one of those 2 days for sure. And again, the preference that we're hearing from our staff is we want more professional development throughout the year. So as I stated to Neil, okay, well, we have 1 day, we can either do PD that day or you can do work that day. We can't get them both in. So that's the reason we went with 2 right there. The other piece of it is some of the feedback we heard this year from parents. Well, why don't we get the full 2 weeks at Christmas? Why are you making us come back Thursday and Friday? So so those are and then the Martin Luther King piece. Yeah, Dennis, we haven't, for a number of years here, since I've been superintendent here, we didn't used to take that day off. And I think these last couple of years, we've just added that in. So that's another option for a professional development day there. Good questions.
And I can say we had a strong contingent of parents last year who called. It was last year, the year before, and I can't remember which. But really were concerned that we didn't have Martin Luther King Day off as a day for kids. So we've heard it both ways. We certainly had some people who felt that was important to have that day off. So, and lots of positive comments as a result this year from groups of parents who were glad to see that. So.
And in addition to that, if you do not have that day off, if students are in school on that day, then some program has to be in effect, which is a good thing, but it subtracts from the student contact day for that day.
I guess that's what I was wondering, is maybe it's not a student contact day, but if it's a teacher development day.
It very well could. We could do that. The reason we went, I think, this year with those 2 days at the end of December there or in early January is because they just fit in. You need 1 day to prepare for the semester. So let's just do 2, and then the students can come back the following Monday. That was the rationale this year. But in another year, when they're not ending at the end of the week, you could probably do a work day when they come back, and then you could do a PD day on the Martin Luther King Day.
This year and next year are the two.
Anything else? Good discussion. Thank you, ladies. Okay, Mary Jo, phonics.
So everybody around here has been talking phonics, 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 because research is really showing, and you're hearing a lot of national news, that really to break the reading code for kids, to get them from not hitting the wall at 3rd grade, is we need more phonics in our schools. So we had quite a bit of PD, Neil, with the phonics instruction, and I thought, well, rather than me talking about what we're doing to improve reading and really break the reading code for kids, to get them to be just strong readers, I thought, let's bring an expert who's been teaching it now, and
let's bring in a beginner as she learns.
and it's not that we haven't been doing phonics in our buildings, it's just we've really dug deeper, and we're really trying to reach out to all kids to make sure they're proficient by the time they get to 3rd grade. So Pam is here just to give you an overview of what life is looking like with phonics instruction.
I'm going to stand up because I have things you're going to be doing. I feel like this year is the first year I'm really teaching phonics. I've been teaching for 30-plus years, and I feel like every year it's like, what should we do? What should we do? So to have a curriculum that actually tells you what to say and what to do. And so literally this year, for the first time in my career, I'm walking around looking at my book. I take it home, I highlight every night what I have to teach, because it is a direct instruction. So you literally are saying to the kids, today we're going to, and just reading word for word. And at first I thought that was kind of hokey, because it was not my teaching style. But as I got into the program and I learned that, wait a minute, look at what the kids are doing, because they're getting this direct instruction. And they apply it to their reading. Right now as a teacher, I have little cue cards that I use because there are scripts that we actually follow. And so the consistency from classroom to classroom, from kindergarten to 5th grade, is tremendous, because we're all using the same language and teaching the same thing. So in front of you, you have some of the materials. I'm going to do a really quick couple mini lessons for you. All right. If you can take out the first sheet, looks like this. We start the year off giving the kids a decoding survey. So all kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, are taking this survey. This is an example of the beginning decoding survey. We also give our kids an advanced, starting in 2nd grade. But it really pinpoints what do kids need to work on. Really Great Reading provides a grouping matrix that we do online. We record the scores, and then you're able to see what strands in phonics the kids need to work on. And that allows me to do small groups with the kids right in my classroom. It coordinates with what special ed is doing and what our intervention teachers are doing. So everyone is really on the same page for the first time. On the back of this sheet, you'll just see all the different things that are part of Really Great Reading. I used to look at teaching as, here's the teacher language, here's the student language, but if you look, we're teaching kids what phonemes are, we're giving them the definitions, what are graphemes, those are the letters. We don't work with letter names, we work with sounds. Digraphs, trigraphs, so anything I use as a teacher, we're teaching the kids that language. And I love that because it feels more grown up to the kids, and it really feels like they're, how do you want to say that? They're really digging into the adult language more than they would just if you're teaching them at a 2nd grade level. Really Great Reading also does a nice job. They'll say the schwa is a lazy sound that can be spelled with any vowel, and we go if, and so there's actions that go with it too for those kids that really need that hands-on learning and the visuals. In the past, I don't think I ever focused on a schwa, but Really Great Reading points out that it's the most common vowel sound that we use in our reading and our language. So the kids get to hear, today my kids got to hear that 92% of The lesson today is how you will read long E and long A words, and they're all like, and kind of that unbelievable piece that, wow, what I'm learning is what I'm really going to use. In the traditional phrase, when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. That really is only true 45% of the time, so we were teaching kids rules, and then it didn't apply to half the words they were reading. So I really like what Really Great Reading does as far as how they drill down and they teach the ones that kids really are using the majority of time. So those are just kind of some facts about the program. It also dovetails really well with best practices. I do, we do, you do. The teacher models, the kids we practice together, and then they do independent work. So it's really that gradual release towards independence. So it takes just all the good things that we learn about teaching and kind of put it into one program. The other part I like a lot too is the positive error correction. It really focuses on correcting kids in a positive way, using positive language. And I noticed that my kids are using it to correct each other, which is really cool to see. So we're going to do a quick little mini lesson. If you want to take out the orange card. And knowing that everything on this background information sheet, these are actually all lessons that we do with kids. So each teaching them about phonemes, that was a lesson. Teaching them about the graphemes, that was a lesson. So the vowel sounds, I'll model it for you, and I'd like you to try it. This is probably about 1 week of lessons in second grade. So to learn the short vowels, the kids get kind of a code. So A as in apple. Your turn. A as in apple. Eh as in edge. Eh as in edge. I as in itch. I as in itch. As in octopus. As in octopus. As in up. As in up. So you'll go around, and if you ever come into my room, you'll see kids in the corner going, and they're really using it, so it gives them something concrete to do with their bodies while they're learning how to read. Now, if you want to take out your 2 boards, the one with the tiles is our tile board, and if you want to, underneath the tile board, put the little whiteboard. And this is what we do. The first step in learning a lesson is you do just listening to the language and manipulating sounds. The second phase is to move around letter tiles and spell words and sound them out. And then the third phase, we use syllaboards. So the kids each have a little kit in my room, and they write the words on the syllaboards by syllables. So it kind of has 3 different main lessons to it. So for this, the only color tile, those are going to be for your phonemes, the sounds. The red is the vowel. Other color combinations doesn't matter. So, and then what you do is you make a row. Can we model one, Mary Jo? Sure. Okay. So if I tell Mary Jo the word is 10, 10, t, e, n, 10. Now she takes the color tiles and puts them on this little board for each phoneme. T, e, n, and the red is the vowel.
I want you to listen.
And all of you are thinking that one too. Okay. All right. Then the nice part is kids can go back to that. T, e, n, 10. So we say it and then blend it. And now she's going to put the letter tiles right under it. So the phoneme matches the grapheme. And as a teacher, I just kind of stop doing most of the talking. We stretch it, and they do all the rest of the work. Okay? And then to check it, I do random checks in my room. So Mary Jo will just touch each letter, say the sound, and then blend it. And 10. Okay. All right, your turn. Your word is, and you start like this, your word is fast. The kids ran around the tracks fast. That's not a very good sentence. The time went very fast. Ready? Fast. Fast. Okay, write the word. And then as a teacher, we just step back and just walk around and watch the kids. Julie, who's been a fabulous rep, training rep, says you have to be cleaned up in 5 seconds. Ready? 5, 4, put all your tiles back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. And she will count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. And that's how fast she goes. So, yeah. All right. Do you want to try one more word? Are you good? Okay, let's do one more. Word, today's tiles is where you put the tile where you go. Nah, kids aren't really going to know that tile, so this is a trigraph, TCH. Would you put that one in today's tile? So you know that you're going to use that in the next word. All right, so the next word. Oh, the teacher said. All right. Stretch. 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 Okay, before you start, there's one more piece. There's the question piece. So I'm going to ask you, how many phonemes? 5. What is, it's okay. What is the vowel phoneme? Eh. And how long or short? Short. And how do you know that? Eh is in edge, yes. And the kids know this routine, and it's really cool to see because they're just rattling it off loud and quick. Then, go ahead and write the word. Stretch. 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 Kathy, I got a board here for you if you want. At the beginning, some of my kids who could read all these words, part of the code in second grade is if you know the word, don't read it or don't say it out loud. And so those kids that are going, but I already know all these words, we are up to 4-syllable words in second grade. So they get to see that, oh, now I get it. You wanted me to know those chunks because now I'm going to use it in my 4-syllable word. So it doesn't take very long for even your top readers or your above grade level readers to go, oh, this is for me too. So, all right, clear your boards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. Everything that we do has a hands-on piece, and I think that's really why kids are responding to this program that we're using. 20 minutes a day for second grade. After Julie is our training rep, and she came and I told my kids, I said, because I've been struggling with this year because it is very, very direct instruction and it's brand new for all of us. So I said, I need some help. It was a week I didn't feel like things were going very well, so my class and I have a rapport where they can give me feedback, and I'm like, yep, that's good. So I said, tell me some things that you think I need to do better. And so this is what they told me. Okay, first you have to go faster. And then I had a little boy going like this. You need to go faster. You need to be louder. And this was after Julie had done a lesson with my class, and then I came back and saw how different she did it compared to what I do it. And so they said, I need to be louder. Count faster. Julie made us clean up really fast. Now you need to do the same thing. And so it's like, oh, okay. But it was powerful for me to have the kids say, this is what you need to do, because they were making the expectation higher for themselves. And my favorite one was, you are doing way too much work. The kids have to do more work. And I said, okay. Say the word. They also wanted me to put more sentences into it instead of just doing the words. They didn't always know what the word meant. Do more practice. Do one thing. I do one, we do one together, and then you should let us do more. And then, they like the actions that Julie brought to our team, and so I added those too. So it was excellent feedback from my kids just to say how I could be better at it. So, and if I look at the highlights of the program, I think it's a K through 5 program, so there's so much consistency now between kindergarten and 5th. There's also 3 options within it. A kindergarten does countdown, and then first grade does blast, and 2 through 5 do the HD word. So if you have kids that need more practice at a level, you have 3 different sets of the curriculum to choose from and to go back. drill down, it really breaks down the lessons, and you can drill down to the lowest component where the kids need to practice. It's all hands-on. Every day we're using materials. It's very rigorous, and that was the one that I liked the best because I thought it would be easy for kids, but I can see now that it's good for all of my kids. It's very rigorous. It applies to real world. I'll see my kids doing stretching as they're reading their words. They're also applying it a lot to writing. And as an adult, I'm applying it to my crossword puzzles at night when I get to words that I don't know. The training rep, Julie, is probably the best rep that I've ever had in 30-plus years of teaching. She's phenomenal. And I think just the district support, and thanks to Mary Jo, getting us all the materials that we needed to make this successful instead of saying, here, you get half of it now and you can have half of it in 3 years. So having those materials, so thank you for that. So, any questions?
So K through 5, do they all use the same boards?
We all have the same materials. Kindergarten's board looks a little bit different. We have double this because we have all the vowel teams. And then 4th and 5th do a little bit more. 3rd, 4th, and 5th do a little bit more with pencil paper than we do.
I would assume that they also have books in reading texts. Or
We still do guided reading, which
Right.
is small group instruction, and that's aimed more at comprehension, and the vocabulary piece. And the kids each still have their individual book boxes, so they still read every day out of real books. Yes.
This is fascinating. How, and I was just kind of toying around with the rest of the group here, asking if they remembered their experience as a grade school student learning how to read, and believe it or not, I can. And it was a phonics approach then, half a century ago plus. I've always been curious. When a person learns to read totally dependent upon phonics, and I'm a horrendously slow reader. Perhaps, I don't know, because of this. When I read, I don't read the word. I sound this word out, even if I've read it, a million times, and it slows me down. Is that a factor, or is there any research, sketchy word, that would illustrate that maybe a heavy emphasis on phonics would result in slower reading speeds, or is there a connection there at all? Do you know? I've
I'm sure
often
there's
wondered
research
about
out
that.
there, but I can just go by, within the first 2 months of school, all my kids had gone up a reading level in my guided reading, and we check, well, you're constantly checking, but I did a recheck at conference time, and every child had improved. And in the past, that was not always true. So I have that soft data that just goes by what's been happening in my classroom.
So we do have exercises where students are encouraged to increase their reading speed and comprehension, and we measure that.
Yes, we work
Okay.
phonics. This is only 20 minutes of our day. In the past, though, we haven't done anything for phonics. So the phonics was the whole in our reading. We still do fluency practice. In your guided reading group, that's a small group of 3 to 5 kids that are all reading at the same reading level. So you still take those kids and you work on the comprehension, and you see them using the phonics in their real reading. And then we work on fluency during that time and vocabulary. So those 3 are covered with small groups.
That's fascinating. I'm always impressed, and I congratulate you, elementary teachers. You actually do teach people something. When you get to the secondary level, they know all this stuff. It's quite a remarkable art.
And in the guided reading groups, they read out loud, correct?
They read to themselves, but although it depends on the group, the lower reading levels will whisper read, and then the middle to top or above grade level will do reading in their head. But then as a teacher, you're going around and you're listening to each student read something during the time that they're with you.
That might help with speed, speed in the fluency piece.
Any other questions? No? All
So the
right.
student actually gets So the student actually gets this paper and,
No, these are actually I just pulled them from my mini lessons. So at the beginning of the year, we talked about phonemes, what is a phoneme? And so my kids now won't say, oh, that letter sounds, they use the word phoneme. And it really raises the level of their understanding because they think, oh yeah, well, this is serious business. And even kindergartners are using the language too. So, but you also have a week worth of lessons built in to accomplish that. So.
thank you.
Thank you. 4.3 legislative update, Dr. Funk.
Just a quick update. I was asked last week to go in. I was one of four superintendents to speak at the House Finance Committee on finance. And there's a significant issue statewide, and they asked me to speak because Albert Lea, we are higher than average for the state in this area, and it's something called the federal cross subsidy. So basically, the federal government is supposed to pay for about 40% of the cost of students who are special education students. For a number of years, the federal government's just kind of ignored that, and they have not paid for it. So there was a 2-day hearing, and I was there for just one of the days, where information was presented, and this information comes from the Department of Education on the trend of federal expenditures towards special education, state expenditures towards special education, and then what's really supposed to be paid for by the local school district. So as you can see in this slide, the federal government in 2017 paid $180 million nationwide towards the special education cross subsidy. Excuse me, $180 million in Minnesota towards the special education cross subsidy. You can see the state picked up quite a bit of money there, $1 billion, $389,000, and then local school districts picked up $669 million. That's what the local share was for special education. Go ahead and move forward a slide, Ashley. So here is another example. If the federal funding covered 40% of the excess cost, you can see the state itself would only have to pick up in 2017 $245 million. When I showed you in the slide previously, they were over $1 billion towards the cross subsidy, if the feds were paying it where they were supposed to be. Next slide. This is an interesting slide because I mentioned 40%. You can see since 2003, the feds have bounced between 9 and I think 6% is what they're projecting in a few years. So in this school year, they're saying that the feds are paying about 7.3% of the cost. You can see how much of the cost that the state of Minnesota is picking up. So those two numbers together, looking at 19, would be about 70%. The other 30% of the cost would then be on the local school district. Next slide. This is where it really hits Albert Lea. Statewide in 2019, they're projecting it to be $830 per student goes from our general education formula funding towards special education because we are because the government is underpaying that. So in Albert Lea, that number's $830 statewide. In Albert Lea, it's $1,285 per student is taken from the general ed formula to pay for excess special education costs. Next slide. So what does this mean? All right, so again, these are statewide numbers. So this slide shows you non-metro school districts of over 1,000, 2,000 students. Statewide, the average is $873. We were at $1,285. So what's this mean in the big picture of our budget? Last year, I think we had $35 million in the general education funding for our budget. We had to take 4.45, I can't read my handwriting, $4.48 million from our general education budget to cover the shortfall that the federal government and the state government is not funding for school districts. So this is a huge financial issue, and it's going to continue to get worse as things go on. So I spoke, superintendent from St. Paul spoke, Robbinsdale spoke, and then they had a small, tiny district, Buffalo Lake Hector, out in western Minnesota spoke. And this is one of the committee members said we need to sue the federal government because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing here. But here's just an interesting statistic. So we take $1,285 per student out of the general ed budget to cover the shortfall for special education. Our operating levy is $1,245 this year. So if they fully funded special education, you could eliminate the operating levy, potentially. So that is it's a huge statewide issue. And we are more of an extreme in our district. We're seeing numbers go up significantly within special education. I think we were at 687 last year. We're at 750 right now. So we're at 21.5% of our population. Pre-K to 12 is special ed. So this is a federal issue that, and go back 2 slides, Ashley. This number on the bottom there with the red line, where the feds are, bouncing between 9 and 16 or 5% when they're supposed to be paying 40. This slide is Minnesota, but it's a nationwide issue.
Do you know about where the nationwide is? Is every state going to be pretty similar?
I think they will be, yes.
Can you please explain the cross-subsidy thing to me again?
So, but yeah, basically what that means is this. So for us, if we have $35 million allocated from the legislature towards general education, we are required to meet the needs of all of our students, IEPs, et cetera. So in order to meet their needs, we have to take $4.5 million extra out of that general education fund to meet the cost of special education in our district. And that breaks down to the $1,285 per adjusted student. So one of the things that the legislature is looking at this year is, do we put more money into the cross-subsidy and to help districts defray the cost? The problem, and go back to that slide again, Ashley, is you see what the feds are doing? That target is moving up and down, and you see the state number. The state's in blue. So state has been putting some more money into this, but they're making up for the federal number that's going down. And then the local districts are having to pay more as a result.
Why is the federals not following through on that if that's
I'm not sure.
their mandate?
Yeah, I'm not sure what, but they've been doing this for a number of years.
And if the federal impacts all of Minnesota, why is Albert Lea 50% higher? Is it because we have 50% higher special ed students?
Part of the reason is we are a regional center, and I think that's why they asked us to come. We have some smaller districts that have high needs students that cannot be taken care of at the smaller district, and they come to Albert Lea, and they're more expensive needs. It really is a makeup, and I can send you I just took out these 3 or 4 slides. I can send the board the whole presentation, but what it'll do is it will show you the trends in special education throughout the state, and it'll show you the the trends in, I can tell you the two quickest or highest growing areas within our district, we're seeing more severe EBD, emotional behavioral students, and we're seeing more autistic students. And that's part of the reason we entered into the cooperative with Austin, was to see if we could educate these these kids in a better approach, which is more cost effective. But so this is I mean, both sides of the aisle, both the Democrats and the Republicans were like, this is just this is not good. But the concern is, as a state, yep, you can pour more money towards it, but what's the federal government going to do? That's the concern.
So does that data include the makeups of the different schools in the states compared to ours?
It has statewide data that you can take a look at. Yep.
Thank you.
The state numbers are going to just vary then, because we have more students in special ed. Our dollars are going to be a little bit higher than a district.
Students and type of students both, yes.
So from our standpoint, what is there that we can do right now, or is the pressure on the state to have to push?
So we talk about having a surplus, and there's a limited budget with a surplus. And a lot of the talk right now is that we want 3% on the formula, 3% increase for both years on the formula, which would be the largest increase I've ever seen, since I've been a superintendent. That's great, but is that addressing this issue at all? Because districts, the other thing I haven't touched on here is 3 of the 4 districts who presented, there's a cap on what the state's going to pay for special education costs. 3 of the other 4 districts are already at that cap, so their local costs are even going to go higher. So really, the discussion becomes, what can we do here do we put the money towards reducing the cross subsidy, or do we put it towards the general education formula, and then basically we're paying for the cross subsidy increases through that? So those are, I don't know what the legislature is going to do, but there's only a finite amount of dollars.
Sorry, are there a lot of communications? Is the state working with our federal representatives? And is it a given that it's 40% that the federal's supposed to be paying?
Yeah, it is a given, and that came up at the hearing. And what's the Department of Education doing with our congressional staff? And they are, and it's a new leadership in the Department of Ed, but this issue is, one of the things they're talking about, the cap was determined, and again, we're coming close to it. The cap was determined based upon data from 2016, so they're talking about maybe we do away with the 2016 data and we use more current data. But that's only one piece of that.
Is the $12.80 cost for Albert Lea factored in? I would assume that students from other districts reimburse us.
They do, but then there is that's prorated. We're not always given the full amount. So the problem is, and we face it both ways, we can send a student to another district, and then they will make determinations upon what to do with the student, and then there's a cost that basically it's about a 90-10 share between districts. So there is some loss both ways, or gains, depending on how you look at it. So I just wanted to bring this to the board's awareness that the cross-subsidy issue, and it's been an issue here for a number of years in Albert Lea. It's been, around, I think the most recent data was 3.9 million, so this is higher, and this is just data I received last week on where we're at with this. But this is something that, unless the federal government does what they're supposed to do, local districts are paying the burden. And this is part of the reason why they don't talk about this, but this is why 90-some% of the districts in the state of Minnesota are one of the reasons why, I think, I don't know how many, 95% have an operating levy. Because they're having to meet the cost of educating their students some way.
What is that, 21% or 21.8 you mentioned for our special ed? That's what our population is in Alberta. How's that statewide average?
I think the statewide average, and I'll get you the information, but I think it's about 14.5% to 15%.
The numbers that we have, are we seeing the increase because of what the state's saying is a child that is in special need? Are we seeing that change and getting to encompass more and more students?
We are seeing a increase of students identified with special needs in our early childhood programming. That's, I would say that is significantly up this year. But the other thing is, this was a different year from the perspective that we had a lot of folks move into the district this year from elsewhere with really significant needs that we hadn't seen the move-ins like that happen before.
Thank you. Anything else? I would look for, before I ask for adjournment, our next meeting will be February, will be Tuesday, the 19th. So there won't be any school on the 18th. And with that, I'd look for a motion for adjournment. So moved. And a second by Kim. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.